right. Shishir, thank you for coming here.
Thanks for having me.
You've come a long way. I'm really glad to have this conversation with you because I've been using your product for years.
Thank you.
And your product has saved me from making thousands of mistakes as a writer and an editor. Grammarly's been going since 2009. I think you have something like 40 million users. 700 million in revenue and 100 billion calls to your LLM every week?
Every week.
And it feels like Grammarly is on every browser on the planet. Like you've already built this out. You guys should be way ahead of everybody else. But you're changing the name of the company to Superhuman.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, Grammarly is a very popular product, spans all of these different users, but our ambitions are much broader than just being your writing assistant, your grammar assistant in your pocket. And as we've grown into multiple product lines, we now have a popular document product in Coda. We now have a mail product in Superhuman Mail. We launched a new product last week, Superhuman Go. We wanted to change the corporate brand to be able to capture that ambition. So Grammarly stays as one of the core products, but the name of the overall company is now Superhuman.
Okay. And before we came on stage, you were telling me about the last mile problem, that there's friction. In terms of getting people to use AI, there's some friction in the sense that with most apps, to use it, you have to stop whatever you are doing, go to a different app, use it, then come back. But with Grammarly and Superhuman, you're already right there in the browser. You've already got that permission. Can you talk about that last mile problem?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that people most misunderstand about Grammarly is that they think that the product and the technology is mostly about grammar. But actually the core product is about bringing AI right to where people work. So Grammarly works in over 1 million different applications. That's actually all the browsers, so all the web applications, but also all your desktop applications, everything from Slack to Word, and all your mobile applications. Grammarly is right there with you and being an embedded assistant in all of your work. So what we've been doing is taking those technologies and separating them. So the part that is the platform that allows AI to run everywhere, that's a new product we call Superhuman Go. And that runs many agents, one of which is your grammar assistant, but we've opened that platform to allow many more agents to be able to run right alongside you, just the way Grammarly does.
Okay, and how many more agents are you offering your customers?
So we launched a couple weeks ago with a few hundred agents. Those cover a set of use cases that are very close to Grammarly, so writing agents that can help you on many writing-related tasks. We also launched a number of agents that connect to basically every application you use. So you can now have everything from your CRM system to your email system to your support system, also acting in concert to help you and assist you along the way. And then we open up the platform to allow anybody to publish agents. So we had a number of people come and do that. Some are popular applications, some are authors, many different examples of people who want to bring AI right to where you work, solving that last mile problem of AI.
Okay. Before when you talked, you mentioned one specific author who's quite famous. And you talked about having her sit over my shoulder or something?
Yeah, so this is, there's many examples of different providers that are building agents on our platform. One of the most fun examples is from an author named Kim Scott. So she wrote a book called Radical Candor, which is about how to communicate directly with people you interact with. And she gave me this observation that I thought was interesting, that very popular book, but what do most people do when they read a book like that? They take the book, they read it, and then they put it on the shelf, and they kind of forget about it. And she said, what would it feel like if you could have Kim in your pocket? Everywhere you were, Kim could help you actually communicate better. So that's how they built an agent on the platform that does exactly that. Just like Grammarly is sort of like your English teacher helping you with all of your communication. In this case, you can add the Radical Candor agent, and Kim can come help you adhere to the advice of the Radical Candor philosophy.
So if you're writing an email and you're maybe trying to mislead someone, is Kim going to interrupt you and say, no, tell the truth?
Yeah, that's okay. So Kim's agent is mostly focused on tone and directness. There are also agents, for example, where we'll focus on correctness. So for example, imagine you're writing an email to a customer Previously, you'd have one agent, your high school grammar teacher, helping you understand that maybe you phrased something incorrectly or you got your tone wrong. But now you might have, for example, your sales agent. And your sales agent says, hey, you're writing this email. The product you're recommending to the customer is actually the wrong product. Or a support agent that tells you that this customer had an outage last week, and you should really acknowledge that as part of your email. So we can then help you with a much broader set of agents that can help you in the way that you're used to with Grammarly, right in the surface you work in.
And are these agents free, or are you asking people to pay a subscription for them, or what?
Yeah, each one is different. So the core platform for now is starting off free. We'll build a freemium tier on it as we build it out. And then the agents themselves, some of them will be free, some of them will be paid. I actually think that's a really interesting opportunity for a completely new business model. We think of the way that Superhuman Go is constructed is that we have an agent store, and you can come and advertise your agents. If you have a business model that works in a paid model, you can offer your agents for pay. If you have a different type of business model, you can go work that way as well.
Okay. Tell us how you think about the competition, because you're a smaller company, although you're extremely well capitalized, you're a smaller company compared to OpenAI or Google's Gemini or Meta. You are competing against a whole set of established productivity incumbents, and these all have their general purpose applications. You can ask them to do anything, whereas Grammarly, for instance, has a very specific task. So how are you going to win that war?
You said a really important word there. You can ask them to do anything. Interestingly, if you think about the way Grammarly has become so pervasive, is that we take a very different approach to AI. So if you look at all the AI providers, I think they largely divide into three big buckets, especially the horizontal ones. There's ones focused on, we call it assist, chat, and do. So the ones that we're most familiar with are the chat AI experiences. It's like ChatGPT, and now there's dozens of different chatbots for just about everything where you can come and ask anything you like. But it's up to you to come ask. There's another segment that is focused on what we refer to as do, where you're taking AI and you're trying to give it an instruction. We sometimes refer to them as headless instructions for them to go do tasks on your behalf. You know, one fun stat that Anthropic released recently was 39% of Claude queries are for these headless tasks, many of them for helping write code in Claude Code. We sit at the other end of the spectrum. Our view of the world is AI should be assistive. We should be proactive in helping people before they ask. This is, you mentioned a stat earlier. We do about 100 billion LLM calls per week. And I just want to calibrate for everybody what that means. That not only would that make us actually one of the top 4 or 5 AI players, for any individual user, it means we are bringing AI to you at a couple of orders of magnitude more than any other player. That spread 100 billion LLM calls across about 40 million daily users means a few thousand times per day. Every time you press a key, every time you open a new application, we are recalculating the world to say, how can we bring AI assistance directly to you? So I think that approach is pretty fundamentally different than what all the other AI players have taken. And it starts with this view of making AI work proactively and embedded in your actual experiences.
Okay. And is there, it strikes me that there's some advantage for having each of your apps be a specialist in its niche. Because you used a phrase that I thought was interesting. You talked about the other AI platforms as being horizontal,
right,
whereas you guys are vertical, and the apps or the agents that will be available, it's almost like an app store, right?
It is an app store. It's an agent store, as we call it. And I do think it's a very important observation that Grammarly's success was doing one thing very, very well, right? And in the process of doing that one thing very well, being very good at helping people with their grammar, we happened to build this platform. So the way I think about it is, it's not our job to provide every particular agent. Every one of those agents should be incredibly specific. The radical candor example I gave is an incredibly specific thing that Kim has devoted her life to working on. And she can now bring that to people, but in a way that it allows her AI to work alongside you. So we have a general platform that hosts many very specific agents.
Okay, but just in terms of making your AI various businesses and agents successful, is it literally an advantage to specialize rather than being a large horizontal? And the reason I ask that is that the larger platforms, they have ingested everything that humanity has ever written. They can call on anything. But are your agents calling on a much smaller model? What's the advantage there of being
Yeah, so we should just separate the models from the specialization point. I think that specialization matters in a few different ways. So sometimes it's the core insight. And so from that perspective, Kim Scott and so on, they have a core insight. And that's a little bit different than what you can get in a horizontal breadth. But it's also about being connected to the actual user. So when I talk about bringing a sales agent to our platform, it's not a generic sales agent that understands something about the general concept of sales. It's your sales agent. It's connected to your CRM system. It understands your customers, your products. And I think from that perspective, it's specialized in a very different way. And I think the underlying technology can still be very horizontal. I think the way that we can run AI right where you work, the different ways we work with LLMs and so on, can be very horizontal. But the actual agent that you're working with should feel like a person, should feel like the virtual human that knows your particular preferences, your systems, your tools, and I don't think that's something that's easy to provide in a horizontal crawl the web approach.
Okay. Do you feel that competition from ChatGPT? Because I know, like in my business at Fortune magazine, we're in the business of writing, right? So we've all used Grammarly for years and years. But now I do see colleagues putting articles into ChatGPT and asking for spell check and fact check and stuff like that. Do you feel that competition?
I mean, actually, ChatGPT is one of the most popular surfaces to use Grammarly in. So in some ways, it's competition. In other ways, it's a very complementary product. I think of ChatGPT as a great product for that ask use case. I have a very important moment. I'm going to go ask for something. Grammarly is the other way around. We're helping you before you ask, before you know to ask. And so we end up being used in concert quite a bit. I think the idea of taking that somewhat magical technology, this virtual human, and bringing it to you, I think is different enough that we've seen these two things evolve together in a pretty positive way.
Yeah. So one of the things that was always impressed me about Grammarly is that you guys were using AI years before it was trendy.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, were there like moments in the history of the company where you had predictions for AI that didn't pan out, or did the business go in one direction when it could have gone in another? Because you must have years more like memories and legacy in AI than anyone else does.
It's interesting. I think the definition of AI has changed over the years as well. And so I think every time a new technology frontier comes out, we adopt it very quickly and make it fairly invisible to users. One interesting stat, so I mentioned we do about 100 billion LLM calls per week. About 3% of those go to publicly available LLMs, OpenAI, Anthropic, so on. Yep. About 97% of them go to our own hosted LLM models. Many of them, we use a lot of the open source models. We use every Llama model starting from 3 billion parameters all the way up. And part of the reason is that our job with AI is a little bit different than some of the other providers. While others might be focused on bigger and bigger models, we're focused on working where you work. So we have to be very fast and we have to be very cost effective. Mm-hmm. Every time you type a new character, every time you open a new tab, every time you open a new application, we're running literally dozens of calls to try to figure out how we can assist you. And so to do that, we had to use AI in a very different way than others. So I found that we adopt as all the technologies come out very quickly, but I also think that we have because our use case is a little bit different, we often optimize for things that are somewhat different than where the rest of the market is headed.
Okay. You obviously keep a close eye on the whole AI business where it is now. Tell us what is the single most impressive or interesting or curious use of AI that you've seen?
Curious use of AI. I mean, one of the ones I've been really excited about is AI in education. students are a big part of our audience, so we get a lot of time to work with educators. And I think it's fascinating watching what's happening with education. And there's simultaneously this immense fear and this immense optimism of what's going to happen. I think of it a little bit like when the calculator was invented, there's a moment of none of our kids are going to be able to do math again because there's a calculator, and every school had to adjust. But actually, I think that the thing that's most interesting is changing how professors work. Before Grammarly, I started a company called Coda. Before that, I worked on YouTube. And at YouTube, we watched a massive change in education where professors went from giving lectures in class to videoing them and broadcasting them to the world. Now we're watching professors create what I would think of as digital twins. And the idea of, today, if you're a student, you do an assignment, you wait 3 weeks to turn it in, then you get feedback. Imagine your professor was right next to you all the time, giving you feedback as you work. Well, just like Kim is there to work with you on the best principles of radical candor. I think that way of thinking about education is a totally different way to think about the student-teacher relationship. It's quite exciting, I think.
Okay, that's really cool. Last question. Is AI as a whole, not your company obviously, is it a bubble?
I'm a big believer in bubbles being a good thing.
Why are bubbles a good thing?
I think bubbles, and if you go back to the last few, and you think about the internet bubble in the late 90s, or what happened with mobile, or what happened with cloud, or so on, a bubble is really a group of people feeling so much optimism that they're willing to rush into something before all of the infrastructure is there. And then all the infrastructure providers chase them to build out, and sometimes overbuild, things that they maybe need or maybe don't need. And at the end of that, some of those succeed and some of those don't succeed. But if you didn't have that rush, you would never build the core stacks that enable it. So if you go back to that internet bubble in the late 90s, we often look back at it as some of the companies that didn't survive. But also in that period, we saw companies like Google, we saw companies like Amazon, and for them to survive, you needed broadband to the home. You needed all of the different technologies that went into the browser. And so it probably is a bubble in that there's definitely investments in things that are ahead of their time and may not work. But at the same time, we're building the underlying tracks that I'm sure are going to produce some of the most meaningful companies of the next few decades.
Yeah. I mean, the development of these new data centers, the new energy and power plants that they're bringing online, it's not like we're going to need less electricity
Absolutely.
in the future, right?
It's hard to imagine that being wasted.
Yeah. Okay. Shishir, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on basically having a great functional company that is not dependent on CapEx from big tech. Is there anything else you think we should know?
Yeah, I think we're very excited with what we're building with Superhuman. I think our mission is to build that AI native productivity suite, reinvent every surface that users interact with, and make it an AI native experience.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shishir Mehrotra from Superhuman.